The dust cloth moved in slow, methodical circles across the rifle's scope, each pass revealing more of the pristine glass beneath. Tessa Ward had cleaned thousands of weapons in her 3 years working storage, but today, something felt different. The Navy SEAL standing behind her had gone completely silent, his clipboard hitting the concrete floor with a metallic clang that echoed through the armory. She didn't know that the faint etching on her dog tag, barely visible beneath her uniform collar, had just rewritten everything he thought he knew about the woman dusting rifles. She didn't know that only one person in U.S. military records had ever made a confirmed kill at 2,940 meters. And she definitely didn't know that person was supposed to be dead. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning had started like any other for Tessa Ward. At 0500 hours, she punched her security card at the weapons storage facility on Naval Base Coronado. Her boots echoing against the polished concrete as she made her way through the maze of metal shelving that housed some of the military's most sophisticated weaponry. The familiar smell of gun oil and cleaning solvent filled her nostrils, a scent that had become as routine as her morning coffee. She tied her auburn hair back into a regulation bun, pulled on her latex gloves, and began her daily ritual of preparing weapons for inspection. The work suited her temperament perfectly, methodical and precise, requiring attention to detail that most people found tedious. Each rifle, each scope, each piece of equipment had to be spotless, ready for the critical eyes of officers who would examine every surface for the slightest imperfection. Tessa took pride in her work, even if nobody seemed to notice the woman in maintenance coveralls who kept their weapons pristine. Her supervisor, Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez, had mentioned that a SEAL team would be conducting equipment evaluations today. Special operations forces were notorious for their exacting standards, and Rodriguez had made it clear that everything needed to be absolutely perfect. The pressure didn't bother Tessa. If anything, it focused her attention even more sharply on each detail. She worked her way through the inventory systematically, starting with the standard-issue M4 carbines, then moving to the more specialized equipment. The Barrett .50 caliber rifles required extra care, their massive scopes demanding meticulous cleaning to ensure perfect clarity. Each weapon told a story through its wear patterns, the subtle signs of use that spoke of training exercises, deployments, and missions she could only imagine. Around 0830, she heard voices approaching from the main corridor. The heavy footsteps and confident cadence immediately identified them as special operations personnel, even before she saw their uniforms. 3 Navy SEAL entered her section of the armory, their presence transforming the quiet workspace into something charged with focused energy. The team leader, a lieutenant with steel-gray eyes and weathered features that suggested extensive combat experience, surveyed the arranged weapons with the practiced gaze of someone who understood that equipment failure meant death. His name tape read, Davidson, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence that marked elite operators. Behind him, 2 other SEAL, both petty officers, began examining specific weapon systems with the thoroughness that their reputation demanded. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Davidson nodded to Tessa with professional courtesy. "We'll be evaluating some of the precision systems today. Just continue with your normal procedures." Tessa acknowledged with a brief nod, continuing her methodical cleaning while remaining acutely aware of their presence. She had worked around special operations personnel before, but never felt quite so conscious of being observed. These men evaluated equipment that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure, and she represented the final link in ensuring that equipment performed flawlessly when lives depended on it. She moved to the section housing the sniper systems, where the Remington M2010 enhanced sniper rifle waited for attention. The weapon was a work of art, its precision engineering evident in every component from the adjustable stock to the sophisticated optics package. The loopholed scope required particular care, its multiple lenses needing to be cleaned in a specific sequence to avoid any possibility of contamination or damage. As she began working on the M2010, Tessa felt the familiar calm that came with handling precision equipment. Her movements were economical and practiced, each motion serving a specific purpose in the cleaning process. She had handled dozens of these rifles, understanding their capabilities intellectually, even if she had never fired one in anger. The scope was particularly dirty today, probably from a recent training exercise that had kicked up dust and debris. She worked patiently, using circular motions to remove every trace of contamination from the objective lens. The cleaning required her to lean over the weapon, her dog tag swinging slightly forward as she concentrated on achieving perfect clarity in the glass. Lieutenant Davidson had been examining a different rifle system when something caught his peripheral vision. At first, it was just movement, the subtle swing of metal against fabric, as Tessa worked. But as he turned his attention more fully toward her, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Hanging from her neck, barely visible beneath the collar of her maintenance coveralls, was a standard military dog tag. But etched into the metal, so faint it was almost invisible unless viewed from exactly the right angle, were numbers that Lieutenant Davidson recognized immediately: 2,940 meters. His clipboard slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers, hitting the concrete floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire facility. Both of his team members looked up from their evaluations, surprised by the uncharacteristic clumsiness from their usually composed leader. Davidson stared at the woman cleaning the rifle, his mind racing through classified briefings and after-action reports he had studied during his years in special operations. Only one person in U.S. military records had ever made a confirmed kill at 2,940 meters. The shot had been legendary within the sniper community, a nearly impossible engagement that had saved an entire Marine unit from annihilation in Afghanistan. The shooter had been Marine Gunnery Sergeant Teresa Blackwood, call sign Ghost 6. And according to every official record Lieutenant Davidson had ever seen, she had been killed in action 3 years ago, when her observation post was overrun by Taliban forces. Her body had never been recovered, listed as missing in action, but intelligence reports confirmed that no one could have survived the assault on her position. Yet here was a woman, working in weapons storage under the name Tessa Ward, wearing a dog tag with numbers that should have died with Ghost 6 in the mountains of Afghanistan. The coincidence was impossible, the implications staggering. Tessa looked up from the rifle scope, noticing that the SEAL lieutenant had gone completely still, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her distinctly uncomfortable. She had experienced unwanted attention from military personnel before, but this felt different. This wasn't the casual interest of someone making conversation, or even inappropriate behavior, that she would need to report. This was the focused stare of someone who would recognize something significant. "Is everything all right, sir?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Years of military discipline had taught her to maintain proper protocols, even when situations felt strange or uncomfortable. Davidson realized he was staring and forced himself to look away, bending to retrieve his clipboard, while his mind continued to process what he had seen. The numbers on that dog tag were not something that would be casually engraved by some jewelry shop. They were too specific, too significant within the sniper community, to be coincidental. But if this woman was Teresa Blackwood, why was she working maintenance under an assumed identity? And if she wasn't, how did she come to possess a dog tag with those particular numbers? "Fine," he managed to say, though his voice carried a slight tremor that his team members noticed immediately. "Just lost my grip on the clipboard." Petty Officer Collins, Davidson's spotter and longest-serving team member, moved closer to his lieutenant. The two men had worked together long enough that Collins could read Davidson's moods and reactions with uncanny accuracy. Something about the woman cleaning rifles had seriously disturbed his team leader, and Collins was determined to understand what had caused such an unusual reaction. Tessa returned her attention to the rifle scope, but she remained aware of the tension that had suddenly filled the room. The SEAL team's entire dynamic had shifted, their casual professionalism replaced by something more focused and potentially dangerous. She completed her cleaning of the M2010's optics system, but found herself moving more carefully, conscious that every action was being observed and evaluated. Davidson tried to continue his equipment evaluation, but his attention kept drifting back to the woman at the cleaning station. The more he observed her, the more details seemed to align with classified information he had about Ghost 6. Her height and build matched the physical description from her service record. Her movements around the weapons showed a familiarity that went beyond simple maintenance training, the kind of unconscious competence that came from extensive operational experience. Most telling was the way she handled the M2010. While she maintained a careful movements appropriate for someone in a cleaning role, Davidson noticed subtle indications of deeper knowledge. The way she checked the bolt action, ostensibly to ensure it was properly cleaned, showed understanding of the weapon's mechanical function that went beyond basic maintenance procedures. Her fingers naturally found the optimal grip positions, and she instinctively avoided touching surfaces that could affect the rifle's accuracy. "Collins," Davidson said quietly, moving to where his spotter was examining a different weapon system. "I need you to run a background check on our maintenance person there. Tessa Ward. Full military records, employment history, everything you can find." Collins glanced toward the woman, then back at his lieutenant. "Something specific I should be looking for, sir?" "Just run the check. And do it quietly." The request puzzled Collins, but he had learned to trust Davidson's instincts completely. If his team leader felt something was worth investigating, there was usually good reason for concern. He made a mental note to access the appropriate databases as soon as they returned to their secure communications center. Tessa finished cleaning the M2010 and moved to the next weapon on her list, AMC Millen TACFIFE, that required similar attention to its optics system. She could feel the continued observation from the SEAL team, particularly the lieutenant, and found herself wondering what had triggered their interest. She had been careful to maintain her cover identity for 3 years, never doing anything that would connect her to her previous military service. The truth was that Teresa Blackwood had died in those Afghan mountains, just not in the way the official report suggested. The Taliban assault on her observation post had been overwhelming, and she had been forced to make an impossible choice between maintaining her cover and saving the lives of Marines who were walking into a carefully prepared Buran ambush. Her 2,940-meter shot had eliminated the enemy commander coordinating the ambush, allowing the Marine unit to withdraw safely. But the shot had also revealed her position to every enemy fighter in the valley. The subsequent assault had destroyed her hide site and killed her spotter, Corporal Martinez, a 22-year-old kid from Texas who had never had the chance to see his newborn daughter. Teresa had survived by sheer luck and stubbornness, crawling through enemy territory for 6 days before reaching friendly lines. When she finally made contact with U.S. forces, she learned that her unit had been officially disbanded, and she had been declared killed in action. Military intelligence had convinced her that maintaining her death served important operational security purposes, protecting sources and methods that had been compromised during the Taliban assault. They offered her a new identity and a chance to serve in a different capacity, away from the front lines where her legendary status made her a high-priority target. The transition to civilian maintenance work had been surprisingly difficult. After years of high-stakes operations where split-second decisions could save or cost lives, the routine nature of weapons cleaning felt almost insulting. But it also provided something she hadn't experienced since childhood, a sense of safety and predictability that allowed her to sleep through the night without startling awake at every sound. She had convinced herself that the trade-off was acceptable. The military got to protect operational secrets, and she got to live without constantly looking over her shoulder for enemy snipers seeking revenge for their fallen comrades. Her official death had ended the cycle of violence that had defined her adult life, allowing Teresa Blackwood to remain buried in those Afghan mountains, while Tessa Ward built something resembling a normal existence. But normal had never felt quite right. Every day she handled weapons that she could employ more effectively than almost anyone alive, yet she was relegated to cleaning and maintenance duties that utilized perhaps 1% of her actual capabilities. She watched junior personnel struggle with marksmanship concepts that were second nature to her, but maintaining her cover meant she could never offer the guidance that might save their lives in combat. The internal conflict had been manageable until this morning, when a Navy SEAL lieutenant had looked at her with recognition that suggested her carefully maintained cover might be compromised. If Davidson suspected her true identity, it would only be a matter of time before the investigation reached levels where her false documentation would not withstand scrutiny. Davidson was wrestling with his own internal conflict as he watched Tessa work. If this woman was indeed Teresa Blackwood, she represented one of the most skilled snipers in U.S. military history. Her tactical knowledge and operational experience could be invaluable to his team, which regularly operated in environments where precision shooting meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. But she was also officially dead. which meant that revealing her identity could compromise whatever operation had required her to disappear in the first place. Military intelligence didn't fake deaths casually. There were always complex reasons involving national security considerations that went far beyond individual soldiers' preferences. He found himself studying her movements more carefully, looking for definitive proof that would confirm or deny his suspicions. The way she handled weapons was certainly suggestive, but many military personnel developed similar familiarity through training and experience. It was possible that he was seeing patterns that existed only in his imagination, projecting his knowledge of Ghost Six's reputation onto someone who happened to share certain physical characteristics. The dog tag numbers remain the most compelling evidence. 2,940 meters was not a distance that appeared randomly or coincidentally. Someone had deliberately engraved those numbers, and there was only one military context where they would have significant meaning. But engraving could be faked, and there might be explanations that didn't involve elaborate identity deceptions. Collins returned from his preliminary investigation with information that only deepened the mystery. According to official records, Tessa Ward had been hired by base maintenance 3 years ago after completing military service as a supply specialist with no combat deployments. Her background check had been routine, her references solid, and her work performance consistently excellent. But there were subtle inconsistencies that troubled Collins' analytical mind. Her enlistment records showed training at facilities that were primarily used for combat specialties rather than supply operations. Her medical records included treatments for injuries that seemed more consistent with combat operations than warehouse work. Most puzzling, her psychological evaluation contained notations about hypervigilance and situational awareness that were typically associated with combat veterans. Her records are clean, but something feels off, Collins reported quietly to Davidson. The pieces don't quite fit together the way they should for someone with her supposed background. Davidson nodded, his suspicions growing stronger. Military intelligence was skilled at creating convincing background documentation, but they were not perfect. The subtle inconsistencies Collins had identified were exactly the kind of details that would be difficult to fabricate completely. Tessa had finished cleaning the MC Millen and was preparing to move to the final weapon system when she noticed the two SEAL engaged in quiet conversation while continuing to observe her. Their body language suggested they were discussing something significant, and she had a growing suspicion that she was the subject of their conversation. The paranoia that had kept her alive through multiple combat deployments began reasserting itself, heightening her awareness of potential threats and escape routes. The armory had multiple exits, but they would all require passing through security checkpoints that would delay her long enough for trained operators to intercept her. If these SEALs suspected her true identity, her options for maintaining her cover were rapidly diminishing. She forced herself to maintain normal work patterns while mentally reviewing everything she knew about the base layout and security procedures. 3 years of routine had made her familiar with guard rotations, camera positions, and the various ways someone might leave the facility without detection. She had never expected to need such information, but old habits of operational planning were difficult to abandon completely. Davidson made his decision with the sudden clarity that had served him well in combat situations. Whatever the truth about Tessa Ward's identity, it was not something that could be resolved through observation and speculation. Direct confrontation carried risks, but it was the most efficient way to obtain definitive answers. He approached her workstation slowly, his movements carefully non-threatening but purposeful. "Ma'am, I wonder if I could speak with you privately for a moment. There's something I'd like to discuss." Tessa looked up from the weapon she was cleaning, evaluating Davidson's expression and body language for indications of his intentions. His tone was respectful and professional, but there was an underlying tension that suggested this was not a casual conversation. She could refuse his request, but that would likely escalate whatever suspicions had prompted his interest. "Of course, sir. Is there a problem with the equipment preparation?" "Not exactly. Let's step over here." Davidson led her to a section of the armory that was out of earshot from his team members, positioning himself so that he could observe her reactions while maintaining a non-confrontational posture. He had conducted hundreds of interrogations during his career, but this situation required a more delicate approach than his usual methods. "I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I hope you'll give me an honest answer. Have you ever made a shot at 2,940 meters? The question hit Tessa like a physical blow, even though she had been preparing for something like this since noticing Davidson's reaction to her dog tag. Her carefully maintained cover story provided no context for that specific distance, no innocent explanation for why those numbers might be significant to her. She considered her options rapidly. Denial was the safest immediate response, but Davidson's confidence in asking the question suggested he already possessed evidence that would contradict an outright lie. Admission would confirm his suspicions, but might provide an opportunity to control the narrative rather than having it developed through investigation. Why would you ask me that question, sir? Because only one person in U.S. military records ever made a confirmed kill at that distance, and according to official reports, that person died 3 years ago in Afghanistan. The statement hung between them like a challenge, forcing Tessa to confront the reality that her cover identity was no longer viable. Davidson's knowledge of the specific shot distance and its historical significance meant that denial would be pointless, while continued evasion would only confirm his suspicions more thoroughly. She studied his face, looking for indications of his intentions. Was this the beginning of an investigation that would result in her arrest and court-martial for desertion or falsifying military records? Or was he someone who might understand the complexities that had led to her assumed identity? If such a person existed, she said carefully, and if they were officially dead, there might be very good reasons why they would want to remain that way. Davidson nodded slowly, recognizing both an admission and a warning. There might be. But there might also be situations where their skills could serve important purposes, even if they prefer to remain officially deceased. The comment surprised Tessa, suggesting possibilities she had not considered. Throughout her 3 years in hiding, she had assumed that discovery would mean exposure and forced return to her previous military status. The idea that she might be able to maintain her cover while contributing her specialized skills to important missions had not occurred to her. What kind of situations? The kind where American lives are at stake and conventional solutions aren't sufficient. The kind where someone with your particular talents might make the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Davidson was improvising now, operating on instincts developed through years of recruiting assets and building operational partnerships in hostile environments. If this woman was indeed Teresa Blackwood, she represented a capability that could be invaluable to his team's mission requirements. But she was also clearly committed to maintaining her anonymity, which meant any partnership would need to respect her operational security concerns. Tessa found herself intrigued despite her caution. The prospect of using her skills for something meaningful again was appealing after 3 years of routine maintenance work, but involvement with special operations would inevitably increase her visibility and the risk of broader exposure. And if someone with those talents wanted to remain dead, then they would remain dead. But they might occasionally volunteer for activities that served the greater good while maintaining their anonymity. The proposal was tempting, but Tessa had learned to be suspicious of offers that seemed too good to be true. Military intelligence had convinced her to fake her death by promising that it would serve important national security purposes, but the reality had been 3 years of meaningless busy work, while her skills atrophied from disuse. I would need certain guarantees. What kind of guarantees? That my current identity would be protected completely, that my involvement in any operations would never be documented or reported through official channels, that I could withdraw from any arrangement without consequences if I felt my security was compromised." End quote. Davidson considered her requirements, recognizing that they were both reasonable and necessary given her situation. Special operations frequently employed assets whose identities needed protection, and there were established procedures for maintaining operational security around sensitive personnel. Those requirements could be met, but I would need to verify your capabilities before proposing any specific arrangements. What kind of verification? A practical demonstration. Something that would confirm that you can still perform at the level your reputation suggests. The request made sense from an operational perspective, but it also represented a significant risk for Tessa. Demonstrating her marksmanship skills would provide undeniable proof of her identity, making it impossible to return to the anonymity she had maintained for 3 years. Collins had been watching the conversation from across the armory, unable to hear specific words, but able to read the body language of both participants. His lieutenant appeared to be negotiating something with the maintenance worker, a development that puzzled him given the routine nature of their equipment evaluation mission. The third team member, Petty Officer Hayes, had completed his equipment checks and was preparing to conclude their visit. He approached Collins with a questioning look, wondering why Davidson had extended their time at the weapons storage facility. "What's the lieutenant doing?" "Not sure, but I think we might be here longer than planned." Hayes nodded, accustomed to sudden changes in operational tempo that characterized special operations missions. If Davidson had identified something significant, they would remain as long as necessary to address it properly. Tessa was weighing Davidson's proposal when she noticed his team members beginning to show interest in their extended conversation. Any demonstration of her capabilities would need to be conducted away from additional witnesses, in an environment where she could maintain control over the situation. If such a demonstration were to occur, it would need to be conducted privately, and it would need to be understood that participation doesn't constitute agreement to any ongoing arrangement. Understood. When would be convenient? Not here. Too many people. Too much documentation. Somewhere off base, somewhere that doesn't create official records. Davidson realized that she was thinking like an operator, considering security implications and operational risks that would not occur to someone with purely maintenance experience. Her caution was both prudent and professionally impressive. "There's a private shooting range about 30 minutes from here. The owner is former military, very discreet. We could arrange something for this evening after duty hours." Tessa nodded slowly, committing herself to a course of action that would fundamentally change her carefully constructed existence. But the prospect of using her skills again, of contributing to something meaningful rather than simply cleaning weapons that others would employ, was too appealing to ignore. "I'll need the address and details about security arrangements." Davidson provided the information while considering how to approach his team members. Collins and Hayes would need to understand that something significant was developing, but the specific details would need to remain compartmentalized until Tessa's identity and capabilities were confirmed. As they concluded their conversation, Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez returned to check on the equipment preparation status. His timing was fortunate, providing natural cover for ending their extended discussion without drawing additional attention. "Everything ready for inspection, Ward?" "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant. All systems have been cleaned and prepared according to specifications." Rodriguez examined several weapons randomly, finding them spotless as expected. Tessa's work was consistently excellent, and he had long since stopped conducting detailed inspections of her preparations. "Outstanding. Lieutenant Davidson, are you satisfied with the equipment condition?" "Very satisfied, Gunnery Sergeant. Your maintenance standards are exceptional." The formal conclusion of their official business provided cover for the SEAL to depart without creating additional questions about their extended stay. Davidson made eye contact with Tessa one final time, confirming their evening appointment with a slight nod that could have been simple politeness. As the SEAL team left the armory, Collins finally asked the question that had been building throughout the morning. "Sir, what was that conversation about?" "Possibly nothing. Possibly something very significant. We'll know more this evening." The cryptic answer frustrated Collins, but he recognized that Davidson was operating under constraints that prevented full disclosure. Special operations frequently involved compartmentalized information and need-to-know restrictions that limited how much team members could share with each other. Tessa completed her remaining duties mechanically, her mind focused on the evening's planned demonstration. She had not fired a precision rifle in 3 years, and there was no guarantee that her skills had remained at the level that had made her legendary within the sniper community. Muscle memory and mental discipline were both perishable skills that required constant practice to maintain at peak levels. But more concerning was the possibility that she was making a fundamental mistake by trusting Davidson's assurances about protecting her identity. Military personnel were trained to follow orders and regulations, and there was always the possibility that his superiors would override any personal commitments he made about maintaining her anonymity. She left the base at the end of her duty shift, driving her modest Toyota Camry through familiar streets while contemplating how dramatically her life might change based on the next few hours. The routine existence she had built as Tessa Ward was comfortable and secure, but it had never felt truly satisfying. The prospect of returning to meaningful operational work was appealing, despite the associated risks. The shooting range Davidson had specified was located in a rural area that provided natural isolation from curious observers. The facility appeared to be well maintained, with professional-grade target ranges extending to distances that would accommodate serious precision shooting. Several high-end vehicles in the parking area suggested clientele who could afford quality equipment and training. Davidson was waiting when she arrived, now dressed in civilian clothing that did nothing to disguise his military bearing. He had brought a rifle case and spotting scope, suggesting that he was serious about conducting a thorough evaluation of her capabilities. "I wasn't sure you would come." "Neither was I, until I got here." They entered the facility, where Davidson introduced her to the owner as someone who needed to conduct private marksmanship training. No names were exchanged, and the owner appeared accustomed to discreet arrangements that didn't require detailed documentation. The longest range extended to 1,200 meters, significantly shorter than the distance that had made her famous, but adequate for demonstrating precision shooting skills. Davidson had brought a high-quality rifle system similar to the M2010 she had been cleaning that morning, along with match-grade ammunition that would provide optimal accuracy. "How long since you fired a precision rifle?" 3 years, 2 months, 16 days. The precise accounting surprised Davidson, suggesting that she had been conscious of exactly how long her skills had remained dormant. Most people would have estimated in rough terms, but operators often maintain detailed awareness of factors that affected their capabilities. She examined the rifle carefully, checking the scope mounting, bolt operation, and trigger characteristics with movements that demonstrated extensive familiarity with such systems. Her hands moved across the weapon with unconscious competence, making minor adjustments to optimize the setup for her preferred shooting position. Davidson observed through his spotting scope as she established a prone position behind the rifle, her body alignment and breathing patterns indicating training that had become second nature. She spent several minutes studying the target through the scope, evaluating wind conditions and range estimation factors that would affect bullet trajectory. The first shot surprised Davidson with its precision, impacting within inches of the target center at 800 meters. The second shot was even better, and by the fifth shot, she had established a group that measured less than 2 inches at extreme range. "Satisfied?" she asked, though her tone suggested that she already knew the answer. "Impressive, but I need to see something at longer range to be completely convinced." They moved to the facility's longest range, where targets were available at 1,200 meters. The distance was still shorter than her legendary shot, but it would provide a more demanding test of her precision shooting capabilities. Davidson watched through his spotting scope as she made elevation and windage adjustments to compensate for the increased range. Her calculations appeared to be performed mentally, without reference to ballistic charts or external aids that most shooters would require for such distances. The first shot at 1,200 meters impacted dead center in the target, followed by 4 more shots that created a group measuring less than 4 inches. At that distance, such accuracy was exceptional by any standard, confirming that her skills had not deteriorated significantly during her years away from operational duty. "Now I'm convinced," Davidson said quietly. Tessa secured the rifle and gathered her equipment, satisfied that she had demonstrated the capabilities he needed to see. But proving her marksmanship skills was only the first step in whatever arrangement they might develop. What happens next? That depends on your willingness to participate in operations that serve national security interests while maintaining your current identity. Davidson outlined a concept that would allow her to contribute her specialized skills to high-priority missions without compromising her official status as deceased. The arrangement would be completely unofficial, with no documentation or reporting that could connect her to special operations activities. The proposal was intriguing, but also concerning. Operating without official sanction meant operating without official protection, leaving her vulnerable to legal consequences if anything went wrong. But it also offered the opportunity to use her skills for purposes that mattered, rather than cleaning weapons that others would employ. "I need time to consider this." "Of course. But I should mention that we have a mission developing that could benefit significantly from your particular talents. Time-sensitive, high stakes, the kind of situation where your capabilities could save American lives." The appeal was calculated but effective. Throughout her military career, Tessa had been motivated by the opportunity to protect others. to use her skills in service of something larger than herself. 3 years of routine maintenance work had not diminished that fundamental drive to serve. "Tell me about the mission." Davidson hesitated, recognizing that providing operational details to someone who had not yet agreed to participate violated multiple security protocols. But if she was indeed Teresa Blackwood, she possessed security clearances and operational experience that qualified her to receive such information. "There's an American hostage situation developing in Somalia. High-value target, politically sensitive, location that makes conventional rescue extremely difficult. Intelligence suggests that precision shooting from extended range might be the only viable option for neutralizing the guards without endangering the hostage." The scenario was exactly the kind of situation where her unique skills could make the critical difference between success and failure. But it also represented the kind of high-visibility mission that could potentially compromise her carefully maintained anonymity if anything went wrong. "What's the timeline?" 72 hours, possibly less depending on intelligence developments. The compressed schedule meant that any decision would need to be made quickly, without the careful consideration that such a significant choice deserved. But operational requirements rarely accommodated personal preferences for deliberate planning and analysis. Tessa found herself torn between competing imperatives. The rational choice was to decline involvement and maintain the secure routine she had established as Tessa Ward. But the opportunity to save an American life, to use her skills for their intended purpose, was compelling in ways that transcended rational calculation. "If I agreed to participate, what would be the specific requirements?" Davidson outlined a mission concept that would position her as Overwatch for a hostage rescue operation, providing precision fire support from extended range while the main rescue team approached the target location. Her role would be critical, but also relatively isolated, minimizing her exposure to other personnel who might recognize her identity. "The shooting positions we've identified would require engagements at ranges between 1,500 and 2,000 meters. Well within your demonstrated capabilities, but demanding enough that success would depend on exceptional marksmanship skills." The technical requirements were challenging but achievable given her training and experience. More concerning was the political sensitivity Davidson had mentioned, which suggested that mission failure could have consequences extending far beyond immediate operational considerations. "What happens if the mission goes wrong?" "Then you disappear back into your current identity, and there's no official record that you were ever involved. The risks are significant, but they're manageable if you're comfortable operating without official support." The admission that she would be completely on her own if problems developed was both honest and troubling. Special operations missions always involved risks, but those risks were typically shared by team members who could provide mutual support in crisis situations. "I need to think about this. I understand, but I need an answer by tomorrow morning." The mission timeline doesn't allow for extended deliberation. Davidson provided her with secure communication protocols and emergency contact procedures, treating her as an operational asset despite her civilian cover identity. His confidence in her capabilities was flattering but also intimidating, given how long her skills had remained unused. As they prepared to leave the shooting range, Davidson made one final appeal that addressed the core conflict she had been wrestling with for 3 years. "I know that anonymity feels safer than operational involvement, but safety isn't the only consideration for someone with your capabilities. There are American lives at stake, and you might be the only person who can save them." The comment resonated deeply with motivations that had driven her throughout her military career. She had never chosen the easy path when important principles were at stake, and the current situation presented another test of her fundamental commitment to serving others regardless of personal cost. Driving home that evening, Tessa considered how dramatically her carefully ordered existence might change based on a single decision. 3 years of routine had provided stability and security, but they had also created a growing sense that she was wasting capabilities that could serve important purposes. The hostage situation Davidson had described was exactly the kind of mission where her skills could make crass the difference between success and catastrophic failure. But participation would also represent a fundamental departure from the safe anonymity she had maintained since faking her death in Afghanistan. She spent the night reviewing every detail of Davidson's proposal, analyzing risks and benefits with the same methodical approach she had once applied to mission planning and combat zones. The rational choice was clearly to decline involvement and maintain her current secure situation. But rationality had never been the primary factor in her most important decisions. Throughout her military career, she had chosen duty over safety, service over self-interest, commitment to others over personal comfort. The hostage rescue mission represented another opportunity to make that same fundamental choice. By morning, her decision was made. She contacted Davidson using the secure protocols he had provided, delivering a message that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of her existence. "This is Ghost 6. I'm in." The response came within minutes, confirming mission details and extraction procedures that would begin her return to the operational world she had abandoned 3 years earlier. Teresa Blackwood was officially dead and would remain so. But Ghost 6 was about to resume the work that had made her legendary within the special operations community. As she prepared for what might be her final day as Tessa Ward, she reflected on the strange circumstances that had led to this moment. A routine morning, cleaning rifles had somehow evolved into a return to the kind of high-stakes missions that had defined her adult life. The Navy Chi SEAL, who had recognized the significance of numbers etched on her dog tag, had opened a door she thought had been permanently closed. The transition from maintenance worker to operational sniper would require more than simply picking up a rifle again. Ghost 6 had been forged through years of training and combat experience that had created instincts and capabilities far beyond simple marksmanship. Tessa Ward had been a carefully constructed facade, designed to hide those capabilities. But the facade was about to be stripped away. Davidson's briefing location was a secure facility 30 miles inland from the base. A nondescript warehouse that concealed sophisticated communications equipment and tactical planning resources. When Tessa arrived at the specified time, she found herself entering a world she had not experienced for 3 years, where every detail served operational purposes, and every person present possessed skills honed by extreme circumstances. The team assembled for the hostage grade rescue operation represented the kind of elite personnel typically reserved for the most critical national security missions. In addition to Davidson's SEAL team, there were operators from Delta Force, Air Force Special Operations, and intelligence personnel whose agencies remained unspecified. The presence of such diverse special operations elements indicated the political significance of the hostage they were tasked with recovering. "Ladies and gentlemen," Davidson announced as Tessa entered the briefing area, "meet our precision fire support specialist. She'll be designated Overwatch for this operation." The introduction was deliberately vague, providing no details about her background or qualifications that might compromise her cover identity. But the assembled operators studied her with professional interest, recognizing that someone brought into such a high-level operation must possess exceptional capabilities. The mission briefing revealed details that made the operation's complexity immediately apparent. The hostage was Jennifer Richardson, a State Department official who had been captured while conducting diplomatic negotiations in Mogadishu. Richardson possessed detailed knowledge of UB-Balt's counterterrorism operations throughout East Africa, making her recovery a matter of urgent national security priority. Intelligence indicated that she was being held in a compound on the outskirts of Mogadishu, guarded by approximately 15 heavily armed militants with connections to both Al-Shabaab and international criminal organizations. The compound's location provided excellent defensive positions while making conventional assault extremely difficult. The target building is positioned on elevated terrain that gives the guards clear fields of fire in all directions. The intelligence briefer explained, indicating positions on detailed satellite imagery. Direct assault would result in significant casualties and would likely lead to the hostage's execution before we could reach her. The tactical solution required neutralizing the external guards simultaneously, while the main assault team breached the building where Richardson was believed to be held. The precision and timing required for such coordination would depend entirely on the Overwatch sniper's ability to engage multiple targets at extreme range within a compressed time window. Tessa studied the satellite imagery and tactical overlay with professional attention, calculating angles, distances, and environmental factors that would affect her ability to provide effective fire support. The longest required engagement would be at approximately 2,100 meters, well within her demonstrated capabilities, but demanding exceptional precision given the need to avoid any possibility of crash. Civilian casualties. What's the timeline for target neutralization? Davidson consulted his tactical notes before responding. 60 seconds maximum from first shot to building breach. 7 confirmed guards in overwatch positions, plus unknown number of roving patrols that might present targets of opportunity. The requirements were demanding but achievable given proper positioning and equipment. Tessa began calculating ammunition requirements, backup positions, and contingency plans that would ensure mission success, even if initial plans required modification. I'll need detailed ballistic data for the specific ammunition you're providing, environmental conditions at the target location, and backup extraction plans in case my position is compromised. Her technical requirements impressed the assembled operators, demonstrating professional competence that went far beyond basic marksmanship training. Several team members exchanged glances that suggested growing respect for the mysterious Overwatch specialist Davidson had recruited. The equipment briefing revealed that she would be using a customized M2010 system, optimized for extreme range precision shooting, along with match-grade ammunition that had been specifically selected for the environmental conditions expected in Somalia. The rifle had been configured with the latest generation thermal and night vision optics, providing capabilities that significantly exceeded the system she had used during her previous military service. The weapon has been zeroed for the specific ammunition lot you'll be using, the team armorer explained. But you'll want to confirm zero and become familiar with the trigger characteristics before deployment. Testing the rifle system confirmed that it was indeed optimized for precision shooting at extended ranges, with trigger characteristics and balance that felt natural, despite being significantly more sophisticated than equipment she had used previously. The advanced optics provided target clarity that would make extreme range shooting considerably easier than her legendary shot in Afghanistan. Flight operations briefing revealed transportation arrangements that reflected the mission's high-priority classification. They would deploy aboard a specially modified AC-130 aircraft that could provide both transportation and fire support if the ground operation encountered unexpected resistance. The aircraft's sophisticated sensors and communication systems would allow real-time coordination between all mission elements. Your insertion will be conducted 12 hours before the main assault begins, the operations officer explained. That should provide adequate time for you to reach your shooting position, establish range cards for all potential targets, and confirm communication links with the assault team. The extended timeline was both advantageous and concerning. More preparation time would allow for better mission planning and target analysis, but it also meant longer exposure to potential detection by hostile forces operating in the area. Medical briefing covered emergency trauma procedures and evacuation protocols that would be available if she was wounded during the operation. The level of detail and redundant planning demonstrated the military's commitment to recovering all personnel, even those operating under unofficial cover. If you're hit, your extraction will be given the same priority as any team member, the senior medical officer assured her. Your cover identity is important, but not more important than getting you home safely. The commitment was reassuring, but also highlighted the risks inherent in returning to operational duty after 3 years of relative safety. Combat operations always involve the possibility of death or severe injury, regardless of skill level or preparation quality. Final mission briefing took place as their aircraft approached Somali airspace, with last-minute intelligence updates that refined target locations and confirmed the presence of additional security measures around the Fena compound. Recent surveillance had identified 2 additional guard positions that would require engagement, bringing the total number of required precision shots to 9 within the 60-second window. Can you handle 9 targets in 60 seconds at those ranges? Tessa considered the tactical problem, calculating target transitions, ammunition changes, and the physical demands of maintaining precision under extreme time pressure. The requirements pushed the boundaries of what was possible even with her exceptional skills, but they remained within the realm of achievability. Yes, but there's no margin for error. Every shot has to be perfect, and the target sequence will be critical for maintaining concealment until the final engagement. Davidson nodded. understanding that she was committing to performance standards that would have been impossible for conventional snipers. But Ghost 6 had never been conventional, and the mission's success would depend entirely on capabilities that existed at the very edge of human possibility. Insertion went smoothly, with the aircraft's crew delivering her to a landing zone 6 kilometers from the target compound under cover of darkness. The walk to her shooting position took 3 hours through terrain that challenged even her exceptional physical conditioning, but stealth requirements prevented any consideration of faster transportation methods. Her chosen position provided clear sightlines to all identified target locations, while offering concealment and multiple escape routes if her location was discovered. The elevated terrain gave her a slight angle advantage that would improve her precision at extreme ranges, while rocky outcroppings provided natural camouflage that would be difficult to detect even with thermal IS. Imaging. Setting up the rifle system and establishing range cards for each target required meticulous attention to environmental factors that can affect bullet trajectory over such distances. Wind conditions were relatively favorable, but atmospheric density and temperature variations would require constant monitoring and compensation throughout the engagement window. Communication checks with the assault team confirmed that all elements were in position and ready to execute on her signal. The weight of responsibility was familiar, but still intimidating, knowing that Richardson's life and the safety of the assault team depended entirely on her ability to perform flawlessly under pressure. At 0300 hours local time, she received confirmation that the assault team was beginning their approach to the compound perimeter. Her role would begin in 30 minutes, when the first guard position came within optimal engagement range. The waiting period allowed final mental preparation, reviewing target sequences and contingency plans while monitoring environmental conditions that might affect shot placement. Her breathing was controlled and steady, her heart rate elevated but manageable, her mind focused with the clarity that came from years of training for exactly this type of situation. Overwatch. This is actual. Assault team is in position. You are cleared to engage on my mark. Davidson's voice through her earpiece was calm and professional, but she could detect the underlying tension that came from knowing that everything depended on the next few minutes. Overwatch ready. Confirm sequence. Guard positions Alpha through Hotel, then Overwatch positions India and Juliet. Sequence confirmed. Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2, execute, 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 execute. The first shot eliminated the guard at position Alpha from 2100 meters, the bullet striking with precision that would have been impossible without the advanced optics system and match-grade ammunition. She transitioned immediately to position Bravo, calculating the slight adjustment needed for the different range and angle. 8 more shots followed in rapid succession, each one finding its target with the mechanical precision that had made Ghost 6 legendary within the sniper community. The suppressed rifle system minimized sound signature, but she knew that muzzle flashes would eventually reveal her position to any surviving guards. All targets neutralized. Assault team is clear to breach. Davidson's response came immediately. Outstanding shooting, Overwatch. Assault team moving to breach now. She maintained observation of the compound through her scope, ready to engage any additional threats that might appear during the building entry phase. The assault team moved with professional efficiency, reaching the main building without encountering additional resistance. Breaching charges detonated precisely on schedule, followed by the controlled chaos of room-clearing operations that she could hear through her communication link. Flashbang grenades created brief illumination visible even from her distant position, while automatic weapons fire indicated contact with guards inside the building. Package secured, Davidson reported after what felt like hours but had actually been less than 3 minutes. Overwatch. Prepare for extraction. Birds inbound your position. The helicopter extraction went smoothly, with the aircraft crew demonstrating the kind of precision flying that characterized special operations aviation. Within minutes, she was airborne and en route to the rendezvous point where the assault team waited with Richardson. Seeing the rescued hostage for the first time made the risks and complications of the previous day worthwhile. Jennifer Richardson was conscious and apparently uninjured, though clearly traumatized by her ordeal. Her safe recovery would prevent potentially catastrophic intelligence compromises while demonstrating American commitment to protecting diplomatic personnel. Outstanding work, Davidson said, as they settled into the aircraft for the flight home. "That was some of the finest precision shooting I've ever witnessed." The praise was gratifying, but Tessa found herself already focused on what would happen next. The successful mission had demonstrated that her skills remained at exceptional levels, despite 3 years of inactivity, but it had also irrevocably changed her relationship with the anonymity she had carefully maintained. Richardson's debriefing would inevitably include details about her rescue that might reach intelligence analysts familiar with Ghost 6's reputation. The precision and effectiveness of the Overwatch fire support would generate questions about the identity of the mysterious sniper who had made such exceptional shots possible. But those concerns seemed manageable compared to the satisfaction of using her skills for their intended purpose again. For 3 years, she had cleaned weapons that others would employ in defense of American interests. Today, she had personally contributed to protecting an American life and national security priorities that extended far beyond individual considerations. The flight home provided time for reflection on how fundamentally her existence had changed in less than 48 hours. Tessa Ward would return to her maintenance duties, continuing the careful facade that protected her true identity. But Ghost 6 had returned to operational status, available for missions that required capabilities existing at the very edge of human possibility. Davidson had been right about the satisfaction that came from using exceptional skills in service of important purposes. The routine safety of her cover identity no longer seemed adequate when compared to the opportunity to make meaningful contributions to operations that saved lives and protected national security interests. As their aircraft approached the United States, she made a decision that would define the next phase of her existence. Tessa Ward would continue her routine maintenance duties, providing perfect cover for Ghost 6's return to the operational world that had forged her capabilities and defined her adult life. The maintenance job that had once felt like exile now seemed like the perfect cover identity for someone whose true value lay in capabilities that most people could never understand or appreciate. She would continue cleaning weapons that others employed, but she would also employ weapons herself when situations demanded precision that existed beyond conventional military capabilities. 3 weeks later, she was back in the Naval Base Coronado Weapons Storage Facility, methodically cleaning rifle systems for routine inspections. Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez had noted her continued excellent performance, while her coworkers remained unaware that the quiet woman in maintenance coveralls had recently conducted one of the most successful hostage rescue operations in Special Operations history. Lieutenant Davidson visited the facility occasionally for legitimate equipment evaluations, but their interactions remained strictly professional. Only the slight nod he gave when reviewing her work suggested recognition of capabilities that extended far beyond basic maintenance duties. Her new arrangement with Special Operations provided exactly what she had sought 3 years earlier when she first accepted the offer to fake her death. She had meaningful work that utilized her exceptional skills, but she also maintained the anonymity that protected her from the enemies who would gladly kill Ghost 6 if they discovered she was still alive. The balance between Tessa Ward and Ghost 6 required constant attention to operational security details that had become second nature during her years as a combat sniper. But the psychological satisfaction of contributing to important missions more than compensated for the complexity of maintaining dual identities. 6 months after the Somalia mission, she had participated in 4 additional operations that had saved American lives and advanced critical national security objectives. Each mission reinforced her conviction that the decision to return to operational duty had been correct, despite the risks and complications it had created. The weapons storage facility remained her primary assignment, providing perfect cover for her real work, while ensuring that she remained current with the latest military equipment and technology. Her colleagues continued to see her as the meticulous maintenance specialist who kept their weapons in perfect condition, never suspecting that she employed similar weapons more effectively than anyone they had ever encountered. The morning routine of cleaning rifles had become oddly comforting, a meditation that prepared her mind for whatever challenges the day might bring. Whether those challenges involved routine maintenance duties or life-or-death precision shooting at impossible ranges, she approached them with the same methodical professionalism that had defined her entire military career. As she worked on another M2010 system, carefully cleaning the scope that she understood better than its manufacturers, Tessa reflected on how perfectly her life had balanced the competing demands of safety and service. Tessa Ward provided security and anonymity, while Ghost 6 provided purpose and meaning that made existence worthwhile. The etched numbers on her dog tag remained barely visible beneath her coveralls, but they no longer represented a secret that needed complete protection. They had become a bridge between two identities that served complementary purposes, allowing her to contribute exceptional capabilities while maintaining the protective anonymity that kept those capabilities available for future missions. Lieutenant Davidson entered the armory that morning for another routine equipment evaluation, nodding professionally as he observed her methodical work. Their eyes met briefly as she cleaned the scope of an M2010, and she saw recognition and respect that acknowledged capabilities extending far beyond what anyone else in the facility could imagine. The dust cloth moved in slow, methodical circles across the rifle's scope, each pass revealing more of the pristine glass beneath. It was the same motion she had performed thousands of times as Tessa Ward, but now it carried deeper meaning as preparation for missions that only Ghost 6 could accomplish. Her transformation from officially dead sniper to maintenance worker to covert operational asset had been unexpected and complex, but it had ultimately provided exactly what she had been seeking throughout her adult life: the opportunity to serve purposes larger than herself, while protecting the security that made such service possible. The weapons storage facility buzzed with its usual morning activity, as personnel prepared equipment for training exercises and deployments that would take them to dangerous places around the world. None of them suspected that their quiet maintenance specialist had already been to some of those places and had returned with capabilities that could make the difference between their success and failure when conventional solutions proved inadequate. As Lieutenant Davidson completed his equipment evaluation and prepared to leave with his team, he paused at her workstation one final time. "Outstanding work as always," he said, in a voice that carried professional appreciation for excellence that extended far beyond routine maintenance duties. "Thank you, sir. Just doing my job." But they both understood that her job had evolved into something far more significant than anyone else in the facility could imagine. The woman cleaning dust from rifle scopes was also the sniper who could make impossible shots when American lives hung in the balance. And that combination of anonymity and capability had proven to be exactly what both she and her country needed. The story of how a Navy SEAL had recognized numbers etched on a dog tag, leading to the resurrection of a legendary sniper, would never be told in official reports or military histories. But it had created an arrangement that served purposes more important than recognition or credit, ensuring that Ghost 6 remained available when situations demanded precision shooting that existed at the very limits of human possibility. Tessa Ward continued her methodical cleaning of weapon systems, each motion performed with the careful attention to detail that characterized her approach to everything she considered important. In a few hours, she might receive communication requiring her to employ one of these weapons in circumstances where perfect precision would mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Until then, she would continue the routine that provided perfect cover for capabilities that few people could understand and even fewer could match. The balance between her dual identities had proven sustainable and satisfying, allowing her to serve critical national security purposes while maintaining the anonymity that protected both her and the mission she supported. The numbers etched on her dog tag, 2,940 meters, remained barely visible beneath her coveralls. They represented not just a legendary shot that had saved Marine lives in Afghanistan, but also the bridge between past achievements and future possibilities that would define the remainder of her operational career. As morning shifted toward afternoon in the weapons storage facility, Tessa Ward continued her careful work while Ghost 6 remained ready for whatever impossible missions might require her unique combination of exceptional skill and complete anonymity. The story that had begun with a Navy SEAL spotting barely visible numbers on a dog tag had evolved into an arrangement that perfectly balanced service and security, purpose and protection. The dust settled on newly cleaned weapons as another day in the storage facility continued with its familiar rhythms and routines. But beneath the surface of that routine, capabilities existed that could change the outcome of the most critical missions when conventional solutions proved insufficient. Ensuring that American interests would be protected by someone whose very existence remained officially impossible